Well, hi, everybody. If you've landed here, you've landed on Let's Talk News, and I'm your host, Leticia Romero, and we are going to talk about the Democrats threatening to close the government once again. Yes, you heard me right. They're talking about a government shutdown. Why? The last one seemed to have worked really well for them. They're clearly trying to slow down the Trump economy because they just can't get over the fact that Joe Biden is not their president and Donald Trump is. So they'll do anything to try to wreck this presidency. Um, you know, it's a funny thing because we have seen riots, we have seen all kinds of protests, we've seen guns, we've seen violence, very similar to what happened in Trump 45. So it has to make you wonder, will the Democrats ever go back to sanity that we once had in this country, where the president is elected and Congress works with the president for the good of the people? I don't know if that will ever happen again. And I'm sorry to say it, because, Republicans were dealt a really bad hand when we had to endure 4 years of Joe Biden. But we did it. And we worked with him, and we passed budgets, and we did what had to be done so that America can go moving forward. But the Democrats can't do it. They're sore losers. They're crybabies. They're pussies. Hello, Kevin. Good to have you from the other side of the world. How is your weather today? I hope it's fantastic. It's a little chilly here in South Carolina. We were out with hats and gloves today. How are you, Karen? Thank you for joining us today. Debbie, how are you, darling? Good to have you. And Andrew, good evening to you. No more Democrats, now socialists. You're right. But what I'm really saddened about is that it's not even their moniker of Democrat or socialist. It's the fact that they can't tolerate that Americans, 80 million Americans, voted for Donald Trump. They just can't tolerate it. And they will do anything to keep control of the White House. And if they get it this time, that's it. We're in for a really big problem, because it won't be a two-party system. And how do I know that? Well, look at the states that are blue states. There's no two-party system because they managed to make sure that doesn't happen with certain election laws and redrawing congressional districts. We see it in New York. We see it in Nicole Maliotakis's district, that they're trying. The only Hispanic Republican in the city of New York, they're trying to draw her out based on people's skin color and their ethnicity, and not on balance of ideas. And that's tragic. Hello, Angela, Ricka, darling. How are you? Hi, Colleen. How are you, darling? Good to have you. So we got some problems. We have some real problems, and we're going to have to figure out how to overcome them. I don't know that the Trump campaign idea is the best choice for overcoming the problems that we're seeing. I think that we have to see real change in the economy, and I think we're seeing it. For a little while, gas went up for a week when the frost was coming because it was price gouging, and it's already back down again. So that's good. But I do think that Congress needs to start focusing on getting some things done. On immigration reform, I think is really important. I've always thought that was important. I think that we have to settle some things. Today, John Fetterman called for the termination of Kristi Noem as DHS, head of DHS. I don't agree that she should be terminated, but I think if I were her, I would think about resigning. Because if she truly wants, if her goal is to save America, then she has to take a look at what's going on and say, well, this is under my watch. I wasn't able to keep things under control, and perhaps I'd be better off serving in another capacity somewhere else. I love her. Don't get me wrong. I love her, but this isn't working out for her. Hello, Francine. And if anybody wants to say, well, this is the president, well, part of being part of the president's cabinet is to tell him, no, I'm not going to send my ICE agents out into harm's way. I mean, that ICE agent that shot Alex Preddy had his finger bitten off. And you can see that because he had, he was applying pressure with gauze or a towel or something. That's no way for an ICE agent to make decisions on the scene. And it ultimately wound up with Preddy being killed. I'm not saying that, Preddy should have been there with a loaded gun. We've already gone through that. But, everybody's human and everybody reacts. So Bill O'Reilly mentioned Sigmund today. You talked about him first. I tagged you in his post. Sigmund. I'm not sure that I understand that. Sigmund. Help me out. Defunding sanctuary cities should be done. Well, absolutely, it should be done because that is against the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't allow states to decide that they can just ignore federal laws. And we've talked about it. We talked about it yesterday. The Congress passed laws on immigration, and today, actually, or yesterday, the Supreme. Who was it? The DOJ actually denaturalized a child molester. So they stripped him of his American citizenship and are deporting him, which is a good thing. Did I say hi to Susan? Hello, Susan. Hello, Lucille. Good to have you. But it's only a problem in Minnesota. Can we blame her for it? No job well done in all other cities. Well, here's what I think, Carl. The problem is in Minnesota, and it is at the hands of the governor and the mayor. But we talked about this before. Why would you send your people into harm's way? Why are they in Minnesota? Why aren't they just working in states that want to cooperate with them? If Minnesota wants to live with child molesters and rapists and murderers and drug dealers, why not let them? Let Tim answer to his people why crime is up there when it's not up in red states. Why not? Because we saw the murder rate go down across America as soon as Donald Trump closed the border. We saw the deaths, the drug overdose deaths for last year plummet to rates that they've never seen before. Our murder rate is lower than it's been since 1908. Our drug deaths are lower than they've been since they've been tracking death by drugs. So if I'm Noam, I say, President Trump, they're not cooperating with us. And our ICE agents are being exposed to trauma, and they're being denied access to hotel rooms, and they can't sleep, and they're going to make mistakes if they're denied basic bodily functions, sleep, eat, water, bathrooms. And we know that they're being denied those things. It's up to her to tell him that. I don't know if she did or not. I don't think she did. Will she resign for optics and appeasement? Possibly. Sometimes that has to be done, Colleen. It's unfortunate, but sometimes it has to be done. I helped win the election for Bloomberg when he was a Republican the first time. And I had somebody in there that had to resign because we did what we had to do. And we resigned for optics, and it was a good thing we did. And later on, all was well. Sometimes you have to do that. Neville Roy Singham. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, yes. Okay, Singham. Now I get it. I was out to dinner tonight and I just got home in a race. And so my brain might not be as sharp as it always is. I had a tequila tonight. I understand your point, but regardless, who is that seat will be instructed by Trump to continue. Maybe it will change after Homan was there. Maybe. Listen, the good shooting was it was tough. It was tough, but it was clear to most people that she was going to run him over. That was enough to say get out. Because again, if the goal here is to make America safe in 4 years, to make America profitable in 4 years, to make people happy in 4 years, you have to pick your battles. Why is he in Minnesota? Why is he in any state where they don't want ICE? You got to think, you got to play the long game here. So if these criminals are being harbored in these states, like Arizona with the TDA, right? And they were saying, oh, there's no gangs here and nobody's taking over apartment buildings. Oh, only just a few. America saw that ridiculousness and they poo-pooed it and they voted for Trump. So let that happen in the states that want to harbor criminals. And deport the criminals from the red states or the states that want to cooperate. Because what winds up happening then is that in the red states, as they become safer, the blue sections of the red states, let's say Texas, right? Or even New York City. Let's take New York because a lot of us know New York. The only place that is blue in New York is Long Island and New York City, right? The rest are mostly red. There's little blue spots, but if there was no New York City involved, New York would be a red state. If there was no Southern California involved, California would be a red state. So if you allow New York to harbor all the criminals and the rapes and murders and child molestations and all these heinous crimes are happening in the blue parts of New York, which is where generally criminals do gather because they know that they'll be protected, then people will start to say, hey, this isn't good. I'm voting Democrat, but I'm not getting anything for it. So they'll start to vote red. So you pick up some seats there. In the red states, there are blue sections. If you make those states so secure all around those blue areas, the people in the blue areas will go, hey, maybe I'll vote Republican too, because why are those people, why do they have the luxury of being safe and I don't? And that's how you pick up seats in Congress. The way he's doing it, it's a bad look all across the nation because you have to remember the news media isn't on his side. So they're only going to play this over and over and over again. That's all they've been doing, including Fox, including Newsmax, including everybody else. Lots of other things have happened. Greenland has happened. The World Economic Council has happened. Lots of things have happened, but we're only hearing about good and pretty. Okay, we talked about that already. Let's see. I always liked Mike Bloomberg. Yeah, I liked him too for the first term. And then after that, I realized he was a real liberal. As a matter of fact, he wasn't just a liberal. He was a global elitist. And that was scary. Too much disaster going on there. It has to be de-escalated in a smart way. Best way to de-escalate it is to just leave and say, okay, we did what we had to do. We got out as many criminals as we can. Now it's your problem, Tim. You handle it, Tim Walz. Plenty of people outside of Minneapolis are very happy about ICE being there. But the people inside Minneapolis aren't. And those protesters aren't from Minneapolis anyway. But anyway, let them figure it out. Trump is smart. Why doesn't he see this too? Is it his ego, his stubbornness? He has a moral compass. He feels that he has a mission and he has to finish the mission. But he's fallen into their trap yet again. They've fooled him twice. That's unfortunate. That's unfortunate. Susie Wiles needs to pull back and yank an ear and say, "Look at what's going on. Let's do this smart. We only have 4 years. Let's pick and choose the hills we die on." It's too much, too fast. He wants to do everything. The man, just that's how he operates. He operates. He plays 3D chess, and people aren't used to it. People on both sides are getting killed and hurt. Not good. No matter how you look at it, lives are being hurt. Plus, the cops and school kids and regular businesses are being affected, and no stopping in sight. Yes, but it's what happened is that what's happening in Minneapolis is not just Minneapolis, because what happens is it's broadcast everywhere, and then people, they become what do they call it? They become entrenched in it. See, what happens is when there's real terrible things happening to you, you focus on the real terrible things. When life is starting to get better, like the economy, gas is going down, life is getting normal again, right? We don't have all these border people coming over and all that. Then you start to move to social issues. And that's where the Democrats have that's why the midterms are usually flipped. Because with the Democrats, they do such a bad job that by the midterms, they want some sanity. So they elect Republicans in the House and the Senate. With the Republicans, they clean up so well that the economic and safety issues are so good that now they start to turn to social issues. And then they're like, oh, the poor starving children and, wherever. And that's what happens. And that's exactly what's happening here. What Trump needed to do was he needed to tackle the economic and safety issues and then switch to social issues to keep the House and the Senate in the midterms. And that he did the opposite. Now he created social chaos, and that's a problem. It makes perfect sense. Lead by example. Yeah. So, to me, look, I'm gonna let me just play you a clip of what the Democrats are saying. Now they're going to shut down the government because they think that it did well for them because of the November elections, and maybe they were right. I don't know. Watch.
Now, Saturday's deadly shooting has the Senate Democrats threatening to block a government funding bill that includes money for ICE and Homeland Security, raising the possibility of a partial government shutdown. The bill would fund about $64 billion for DHS, including roughly $10 billion for ICE operations. But Democrats say they won't support it after Preddy's killing.
We have a bill about funding them, giving them more money. I'm not voting for that, and I didn't vote for tripling their budget over this summer.
Republicans need at least 7 Democratic votes to pass the measure in the Senate. The deadline is January 30th, this Friday. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina said on X that Democrats should reconsider their threat to not support DHS funding, saying, quote, "This is a very bad idea at a time of extreme danger. Now is not the time to defund one of our major national security priorities, border protection." Even if the bill is blocked, ICE would still have access to tens of billions of dollars already approved under last year's spending law.
Okay, so what we learned was that people believe that since the Republicans are in control of the House and the Senate, if the government is shut down, it's the Republicans' fault. We've got to be cognizant of that. Georgia high school students walked out of school to protest ICE. Math and reading scores are under 20%, but teachers have them out protesting, right? Because the schools have always been used for social projects. It's a scientific study, how much you can bend the mind of American children. It's been for the longest time they've used kids for that. Isn't ICE funded through 2029? No, nothing is funded through 2029. Your budgets are fiscal year. So the last fiscal budget was done. Let's see. I'm going to share the screen. Let's talk about the Biden fiscal budget. Okay, it was 2024. Here it is. Okay. See if you can read this. I hope you can. All right. So Biden signs that this was March 25th, 2024. So our budget has to be adopted before April 15th. But our fiscal year ends in October of every year. So while Mike Johnson was in control of the Congress, we passed a spending bill. And this is from the American Council of Education. I picked this in particular because this was something that Trump ultimately cut when he came in, the Department of Education. But this is something that's near and dear to the Democrats' hearts. So this budget was passed by Johnson, right? After months of delays over the weekend, Congress passed and President Biden signed a $1.2 trillion spending bill for the remainder of FY24 that includes funding for the Department of Education and some research agencies. Okay, so we have funding for historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges and universities, minority serving institutions, and they were all increased by 7.5 million. Strengthening institutions by 10 million. Funding for international education and foreign language programs sustained. The fund for improvement of post-secondary education saw an overall decrease of 13 million. Federal TRIO programs are sustained at 1.19 billion. Okay, so the Republicans, they passed a bill that was full of education budget situations, something they weren't agreeing with because they felt that it was being wasted. And also it was a mind fuck for kids, right? And because kids were not learning. America is not even in the top 5 of the countries. Let's see. In 2025, the United States generally lacked outside the top 10 in global education, often behind nations like Singapore, Canada, and Finland. So we are not the number one. You know, we spend more money on education than any other country, and we're not number one. But the Republicans worked with the Democrats, and that was their baby, education, and they passed it. But we already know from back in the day when Trump wanted to build a wall and the famous press conference with Pelosi and Schumer and them threatening to close down the government and arguing with Trump in front of the press over, $5 million, or was it 5 billion or 50 million for a wall, which they never gave him. And Biden then sold off the pieces of the wall. 4 months ago, they shut it down to get illegals health care, and now they will shut it down to keep illegals from being deported. Hi, Greg. Thank you for joining us, and you're absolutely right. So think about what they're doing. They are, they're playing the PR game, and we don't, and we need to start. And that's why I said we need to shift to social issues. And maybe it's time for Congress, in this Congress, to actually change the immigration laws. Give the Democrats what they're begging for. Change the immigration laws. Find a way. Figure it out. Let all criminal illegals be deported, and maybe let all the people who have arrived here under Biden go through the vetting system and then be made, be capable of being made citizens. But now we'll have a record of who they are. Laura Ingraham had doctors on tonight saying even medical schools are woke indoctrination institutions now, saying it's dangerous for our health. Come on. We know that because of COVID, don't we? All of them jumped on board. And you tell me, what doctor have you seen lately that actually understands symptoms without having to look them up and doesn't try to push a prescription down your throat? I don't know about you, but mine does. And I have a really good doctor. We were 17, I think. We were 17, I think. I can't remember what that's in reference to. Maybe you'll help me out. Republicans always cave. Democrats, they never do. Democrats are, they like to call us a cult, but they're the ones that are in the cult. The truth is they walk in lockstep. Everything they accuse us of being is what they actually are. And that's the problem. So here, they're threatening to shut us down. Let's just take a look. I'm going to share the screen again. I hope that's okay with all you guys. I know you hate when I share screens, but I have to sometimes. Okay. Let's just see what this spending bill, and I got the League of Minnesota Cities. See over here? League of Minnesota Cities. Federal update. U.S. House approves final spending bills as Senate weighs next steps. Okay, so the U.S. House on January 22nd approved the final 4 federal spending bills for fiscal year 2026, sending the legislation to the Senate just days before a January 30th shutdown. Since House passage, Senate divisions have emerged driven by concerns over Department of Homeland Security funding following a second deadly shooting in Minnesota involving Customs and Border Protection. Together, the four bills total approximately $1.2 trillion and would fund the federal government through the end of fiscal year 2026. That's October. The legislation covers the largest share of federal discretionary spending, including funding for the Departments of Defense, Health and Human Services, Homeland Security, Labor, Housing and Urban Development, Transportation, and Education. All but Homeland Security bill were packaged into a, quote, a multi-bill minibus and passed by 34-88 vote in the House. So that's a bipartisan vote. That package was then combined with a separate two-bill minibus that had passed the House the previous week. Okay, so the Homeland Security bill drew narrower support, 220 to 207. Okay, so here's the funding levels rise for most domestic agencies. Overall, discretionary spending levels in the House passed packages are generally higher than in fiscal year 2025. In several cases, funding exceeds levels proposed by the Trump administration. Key funding provisions include Department of Defense, $834 billion, about $3 billion more than fiscal year 2025. Department of Homeland Security, $64.4 billion, about $600 million less than fiscal year 2025, including about $10 billion for ICE, along with funding for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, Transportation Secretary Administration, the Coast Guard, and Border Operations. Now, remember that we wouldn't need all this money for ICE if Joe Biden didn't let 20 million people into the country unvetted. This is what our problem is. And we wouldn't need all this money for ICE if all of the states cooperated with us. And when a criminal was convicted, when somebody, a migrant was convicted of a crime, that they would let ICE take them from the courthouse. Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, $221 billion, an increase of about $23 billion. Now, that includes an increase in education, which Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education. Transportation and Housing and Urban Development, approximately $102.9 billion, up about $15 billion. Commerce, Justice, Science, between $76 billion and $77 billion, an increase of roughly $9 billion. Energy and Water Development, $57 billion, roughly flat. And Interior and Environment, between $40 billion and $41, slightly below fiscal year 2025. So that's what is on the table for funding. They're saying that they're not going to vote for it because there's money for DHS, ICE, in that package. How does that make sense? Because there's already spending that's there, that was in place from the previous spending bill. How does it make sense to say no? I don't know. We are last in education. I don't know about last, but we're down the wire. It's not good. If they shut government down, they take away the Democrat senators and Congress salary away this year, period. We can retaliate with that. No, we can't, because the Constitution says that they have to be paid no matter what. You can't just willy-nilly the Constitution. You have to read it. My friend Colleen gave me the Constitution. I think I have it right here. Do I have it right here? Yes, I do. Look at that. I have it. You all have to get one, and you have to read it. You have to read the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and you have to understand the laws. You can't just say you shut down the government, Congress doesn't get paid. They're mandated to be paid. That needs to change. There's a convention of states that's going on that wants to change a lot of things. And I would expect that everybody should go to conventionofstates.com or cos.com. Just Google it and find out about the Convention of States. It's really important. But I think that the most important thing that we can all do to move things forward is that we have to call foul on the hypocrisy that's going on. We have to call foul on the paid protesters. We have to call foul on the global elitists whose goal is to undermine this presidency and your and my will. We voted, and now the Democrats have to understand that Trump is their president. And if you want to get a woke leftist crazy, just keep telling them that Trump is their president. Period. They'll freaking melt into a puddle. I gave you a pocket constitution when we met, and here it is. That's it. That's where it is. Convention just got their 20th state, right? We need 26, right, Kyle? I think so. Where do you get a copy of that? I think that if you go to the whitehouse.gov, I think you can get one for free, and maybe just postage. And it's online. You can print it out. Just look it up. And you can print it out, or you can read it whenever you want without having to have the paper. But yeah, this one my friend Colleen gave me. I have a couple of others that I got when I visited the White House. You should be able to get it in most bookstores. But everybody needs to read this and understand it and know what it is, because I've got all these freaking liberal lefty loonies, yelling 2A with Alex Preddy, and they don't understand that when a cop tells you, or a law enforcement officer tells you to stop and cooperate, if you're carrying a weapon and you don't cooperate, all your 2A goes right out the window. Goes right out the window, because law enforcement action trumps your right to own a firearm. I mean, you can own it, but you have to be a responsible firearm owner. Okay. Got mine on Amazon, or you can go to Amazon. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that we have discussed in enough depth the fact that Democrats are hypocrites, and they are playing all to the midterm elections, and they are vapid. They have absolutely no substance behind them. They will do whatever has to be done. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for us to start playing the PR game. Debbie gave me one years ago. Thank you, and have a good night. Good night, everybody. I will see you tomorrow at 8:00. Please share the show. Thanks a lot. Oh, and YouTube is doing good. Lots of crazy trollers commenting. And the more they comment, the more subscribers we get. We're almost there. Subscribe, like, love. Bye.